We are here with Mr. Peter Thomas Drennan, UN Under Secretary General for Safety and Security. Thank you very much for this interview.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Let me just jump to the first question, and I want to know what you think about this. In this concerning Syria context, what do you make of these upcoming events, and do you think that a nuclear war may take place in the near future?
Certainly the conflict in Syria has been ongoing for quite some time, and the UN, as the world community does, would like to see a resolution to that as soon as possible to alleviate the suffering of all the people in Syria. But of course, it's not a conflict which will be resolved through force. It needs to be a conflict which is resolved through a political solution. And certainly that's what the UN is working towards, helping all of those countries who are involved, who have an interest, to find a political solution which will ultimately alleviate the suffering of the people of Syria.
I know that we had the CPP team, Romanian team, working with you in Syria. Can you tell us something about this mission, and if you think that you will work with us again in Syria?
Certainly we've had a long-standing relationship with the Protection and Guarding Service, providing close personal protection, so CPP teams. They do, firstly, a very, very professional job, and we rely upon them enormously. And not only in Syria, but a range of different countries. They provide the close personal protection for senior UN officials, and of course in Syria we will have senior UN officials there for quite some time. If we need to rely upon the Romanian CPP team, then we certainly will, because I have enormous confidence in what they do.
Can you tell us about that specific ongoing event that you had with both UN and CPP teams?
So what we've done over a long period of time now is develop this close working relationship with the Protection and Guard Service here and providing the CPP teams. Why we do that is because we have, in a range of different locations, like Libya, like in Afghanistan, in Sudan and South Sudan, these places, senior UN representatives, and because of the threat environment there, we provide CPP for the senior UN officials. So over time, we've relied more and more upon the Romanian government supporting us there through the Protection and Guard Service, and it is now at a point where we have developed joint training programs. We have a Centre of Excellence here in Bucharest, where we send our people from the UN to be trained, as well as the training that takes place for the CPP teams which are deployed out into the field.
So the Romanian officers are the trainers for upgoing officers, UN officers?
Exactly. So we have a standard of close personal protection that UN officers need to reach, and part of that is what we call a CPOC course, so it's a Close Protection Officer course, which is run here in Bucharest at this training centre.
What are they learning in this training centre?
Enormous amount. Okay, so firstly they have to know what's the standard procedures. So when you're protecting a dignitary, and whether that's a dignitary here in Romania or in the field for the UN, they have to know how they do that, which is about static security, it's about venue protection, it's about mobile security, it's about how you respond to an incident. Now that incident could be anything from falling in a swimming pool to someone trying to intercept and hijack and kidnap the principal. So it entails a large number of tactical skills, from swimming to firearms to driving vehicles. It really is probably not a well understood profession, but it does encompass an enormous amounts of different skills that they need to have.
So, excuse me for saying that, but it's practically what you're saying in the James Bond movies. It
is like the James Bond movie, but it is real. Okay, so they have to be very, very professional and very proficient in all of these skills. And that's why the training program which has been developed here and that we do together is so important, because it makes sure that we have a consistent level of skills which we apply across the board.
Can you tell us about the dangerous situations that our teams and your teams were involved in and what they did?
Well, certainly in the field, if you're in, say, Afghanistan or in Libya, and Syria and Sudan, there is a presence of armed groups, there's a presence of terrorists, and those armed groups or those terrorists or even criminals are always looking for opportunities to make their political statements or some gain through kidnapping or whatever. So the CPP teams, they need to plan for how the senior UN official will move around in the country. They need to plan for what the contingencies might be. If they are attacked, they need to, first responsibility is to make sure the principal is safe. And so whether that's to stand and fight or whether that's to extract them, it depends on the circumstances. But again, it gets back to why the training is so important is they need to be able to respond however, depending on what the type of circumstance is that they're faced.
Let me ask you a intern political question. In Romania, the Prime Minister and the members of the cabinet cancelled all the services from CPP for themselves. What do you make of that?
I wouldn't comment on what they have done here, but the way we work, and this is across the board, in that close protection, CPP is based on risk. So we evaluate what the risk is, and then we apply the CPP which is commensurate, equal to what the risk is. So I have no doubt if the risk was high enough here, then the CPP would be provided, and those people who receive it would understand how important that is. The other thing which is always important to understand is that it's not just about the individual, it's also about the office that that individual holds. And it's important that we protect the integrity of that office from a security point of view, as well as protecting the individual. So again, it's not a simple issue to deal with, but again, I'm sure if the threat and the risk was high enough, then the CPP would be there.
Let me ask you something about the Cold War that we're facing now. It's America and Russia, it's EU and Russia, and we're talking about, especially about France and the Great Britain. Do you think that this Cold War can turn into a battlefield war?
What's important to remember here is that all countries need to work together to find political solutions to issues. If we look historically, the Cold War was not successful in finding solutions. The previous world wars were not successful in finding solutions. And
long-lasting.
Exactly. And the people that suffer from that are the civilians in the world. So what's important is that we continue to work through places like the UN, the multilateral forums, to find solutions to these issues and not elevate these issues to confrontation. So that's what's important, and really that's what the UN is focused on, is bringing together the different parties in a convening sense and ensuring that political solutions are found. And that's the role of the UN Security Council. I mean, to actually bring, those solutions to the table so that we can actually move forward in a peaceful way.
I've seen the discussions that took place in the UN mostly recently, and I've seen that we cannot talk about settling things down because there are really contendent discussions. US, Russia. In the field, did you ever feel that the Russians and their allies are making something to sabotage your missions?
I can speak from personal experience. I mean, I was in Syria, I think 3-4 weeks ago now, and not only did I have discussions with the Syrian government, but also discussions with the Russian Federation military representatives there about getting access to different regions to provide humanitarian support. And both, the Syrian government and the Russian Federation representatives there were very supportive in being able to provide that humanitarian support. So I think there is the political discussion which goes on, but there is also some very practical aspects of this. And I know certainly with Izhguta, we were working very closely with the Russians to get that support in there to the people, the humanitarian aid which was needed. So there is, as I said, a political discussion that goes on, but also the practical work that needs to be done, and there's a lot more cooperation in getting that done.
Yes, but in these chemical attacks, Russians say that they never took place, and the UN forces are trying to help people there.
So again, I mean, the use of chemical weapons is abhorrent, irrespective of where, by whom, or whatever. What's key here again is for the chemical weapons inspection to take place, to determine what was used and by whom. And of course, that's a process which is ongoing now, and my department is working very closely with all those parties to ensure that chemical weapons inspection can take place.
But the UN officials or experts, did they ever see these people harmed by the chemical weapons?
Well, again, there is, as we've all seen on television, a whole range of footage about what occurred. But again, part of the chemical weapons inspection is to gather the evidence which would support or not support what we all see. And again, it's the reason I'm cautious on that is that these are very, very significant issues. And again, I mean, if there is the use of chemical weapons, it's against international law, it's against humanitarian principles, and so we need to be very sure that we're correct in what we say. And again, this is why it's important for the inspection to take place, to ensure that what is being said is accurate.
When do you think that it will take place?
I'm hoping it'll take place in the very, very short future. And the reason for that is that the chemical weapons inspectors are in Syria. We've made arrangements for them to visit the site. So it should
weeks?
I'm hoping in a much shorter time frame than that.
Okay. What was the most challenging operation UN and CPP participated in?
I think there's probably more than one. I mean, operating in those environments that I talked about, let's say in Sudan, out in Darfur, or in Libya, or in Afghanistan, I mean, these are all difficult places to operate. And there are a range of threats and risks there at any time. So there's not one occasion. I think it's many occasions. But again, the good thing about this is we don't see and we don't have to experience too many incidents because of the planning which goes in and the risk mitigation, so the measures we put in place to prevent it. And again, that's what's the value of the CPP, is that this is part of what they do, making sure that we don't have incidents because we do good planning and good preparation.
Did you work with them also in Ukraine?
No.
But what are the upcoming events that you expect in Ukraine now?
Again, I mean, Ukraine is part of that ongoing discussion as to try and find political solutions to the issues there. But again, from the UN, I mean, what we want to see is resolution to conflict. We want to see that there is self-determination by people, and we want to ensure that the human rights principles and human rights laws are observed and that there is no suffering for the civilian populations who get caught up in these conflicts.
You told me before the interview that you are a very busy person.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of the discussions that you're making and these examples that you gave me are really inspiring for people. So let me just ask you, why did the UN choose Romania to provide protection officers for the field operations, and what were the selection criteria? Maybe there are more people who want to join you.
So why do we choose the Romania? It's because this relationship evolved over a period of time, and
14 years now.
Yes, and the more we were involved, the more we recognise the professionalism and the skills and the knowledge and the experience that the Romanian CPP have. So that's, to me, a really valuable asset. And the fact that I can call upon the CPP from Romania to provide it in these high-risk locations and have this level of confidence that they're doing a very good job. And the reason there needs to be a level of confidence is that in my role, I am directly responsible and accountable for the safety and security of all UN civilians globally. And the Secretary General entrusts that to me. Now, of course, I don't go out and provide CPP and do all these things, and I need to rely upon people to do that. And the Romanian CPP, as has evolved over time, and as I've personally experienced, that they've provided the CPP for me in some of these locations. I have enormous regard and respect for their professionalism and their experience and their knowledge and their skills. So to me, it's a very, very simple solution that I know what they can do, and I trust what they do. The other thing, and it's and part of my visit here is to see this training centre, see the level of commitment and resourcing that is put into providing the training for these people. And I must say, and I spoke to the director this morning on this exact issue, the breadth of the different aspects of CPP that is covered here is second to none. I mean, it is by any standard globally as good as you'll get, because they're not only dealing with the being able to run and jump and drive cars and shoot, but also to do the planning, to be psychologically resilient, to be professional in how they go about things. I mean, so it is a complete package, and that's why this relationship to me and the UN's use of the CPP here is so important. And if there are people out there who are thinking of joining, I would certainly encourage them, because it's a great service, but it also has enormous opportunities in working with the UN and getting these deployments overseas.
Let me ask you one more question, please. Okay. What's next for the ongoing operations with the CPP?
So we will continue in the locations where we are. If there are new missions which start up in any particular time and they're in high threat environments and we need CPP, then I will sit down and discuss with the Romanian permanent representative to the UN, so the Ambassador Ginga, and he will then approach back here with the director and the government to see whether they can be supported. But for me, my first port of call to ask for support will be with Romania, because of my confidence in them.
Really interesting. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I've learned a lot. I'm sure that the audience will be really interested in our interview. Mr. Peter Thomas Drennan, UN Under Secretary General for Safety and Security. Very nice meeting you.
Likewise. Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.